The Mercedes-Benz W126 is considered the most successful and possibly the best S-Class of all time. Built between 1979 and 1991, it set new standards in terms of safety, elegance, and technical innovation. With airbags, ABS, and clean lines, it became the status symbol of the 1980s, driven by politicians, heads of state, and celebrities worldwide. But what really happened to the W126 shows its history, from acclaimed luxury car to becoming a timeless classic that is more coveted today than ever. What really happened to the Mercedes-Benz W126 series doesn't begin with numbers, but with a quiet revolution. A sedan that first calmly unveiled what had been hidden for decades behind chrome and horsepower. Technology that protects lives, elegant innovation, and an aura that even silenced critics. Dive into the history of a car that redefined the S-Class without needing to shout. In the late 1970s, amid the turmoil caused by the oil crisis and increasing safety and environmental requirements, Mercedes began Project W126 in 1973, the successor to the W116 S-Class. The success of this series was not a given. After more than 6 years of development, it was presented in 1979. The goal was better aerodynamics, more safety, less consumption, a luxury car that was smarter than its chrome shine suggested. The flowing lines, the drag coefficient of 0.36 in the sedan, the retractable windshield wipers, all details finely tuned for efficiency and elegance. The technology didn't shine with drama, but with effective power. In 1981, the driver's airbag came as standard. Shortly after came belt tensioners, and in 1985, also the passenger airbag, pioneering work in mass production. Added to this were traction control, ASR, automatic locking differential, and a construction that set new standards for safety in asymmetric frontal collisions. Under the body panels hid not hot air, but high technology. Lighter steel, plastic bumpers, optimized engines with aluminum blocks. Efficient, but without losing appeal. When the W126 series was presented at the IAA in 1979, no one yet imagined that it would become the longest-running and best-selling S-Class of all time. From the beginning, Mercedes bet on diversity. 6- and 8-cylinder gasoline engines, later also diesel variants for the American market. The engine range went from the economical inline-six 280 to the powerful 560 SEL V8, which with over 270 HP became an icon. Especially in the United States and the Middle East, the 560 SEL became a status symbol. Heads of state, diplomats, business magnates all used the S-Class as a rolling business cart. At the same time, Mercedes also offered models that focused more on efficiency. The 300 SD turbo diesel was the very first diesel S-Class and was primarily intended for American markets, where strict consumption limits applied after the oil crisis. Another decisive innovation was the introduction of 2 wheelbases, the standard version for private buyers and the long SEL version, which was especially popular as a chauffeur-driven car. With it emerged the image of the S-Class as the ultimate travel sedan, a car in which the owner could not only drive themselves, but was often driven.
The world reacted immediately. The W126 was celebrated as a modern, safe, and elegant successor to the angular W116. Mercedes had recognized that the era of chrome and excessive opulence was over. Instead, clean lines, flatter headlights, integrated bumpers, and aerodynamic elegance characterized the design. Restraint instead of ostentation. The success was overwhelming. Between 1979 and 1991, more than 892,000 vehicles were built, more than double its predecessor. No other S-Class model has ever reached these production figures. Especially in Europe and North America, the W126 became the automotive standard. Even competitors like BMW or Jaguar had to acknowledge that Mercedes had set the bar very high. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement. Whoever represented something in the 1980s, from the Chancellery to Hollywood, sat in a W126. Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, François Mitterrand all drove or were driven in this S-Class. In Germany, the W126 became the symbol of economic miracle 2.0, a self-confident new federal republic on four wheels. The 1980s were a decade of contrasts. On one hand, economic boom, on the other, uncertainty over oil prices, the environmental movement, and political tensions. Exactly in this field of tension, the W126 rolled at the top. Its owners were the winners of that era: managers, politicians, kings, stars. It was in the driveways of Beverly Hills villas as well as in front of ministries in Bonn. But the aura of success also had its shadows. The oil crises of the 70s still echoed, and cars with large displacement V8 engines were increasingly seen as dinosaurs. Mercedes reacted intelligently through improved aerodynamics, the use of lighter materials, and the introduction of more efficient engines. At the same time, safety innovations like ABS, airbags, and belt tensioners moved to the forefront, technical masterpieces that helped position the W126 as cutting edge. But despite these advances, it was clear, a car weighing almost 3 tons when fully loaded and V8 engines with up to 5.6 liters of displacement contrasted sharply with new demands for environmental consciousness and conservation. For many, the S-Class was a dream. For others, a symbol of decadence. Precisely this contradiction made the W126 fascinating. It was a symbol of stability in a world of change. While political systems wavered, think of the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the S-Class rolled sovereignly through the streets, as if it were untouchable. It embodied what many desired: security, tranquility, and control. But behind the scenes, Mercedes also struggled with problems. The American market, one of the most important for the brand, imposed increasingly strict emission and consumption regulations. Models like the 300 SD diesel were actually compromise solutions to stay in the game. At the same time, the competition wasn't idle. BMW offered more sporty alternatives with the 7 Series. Jaguar attracted with British nobility, and Lexus suddenly appeared as a new challenger in the late 80s. Thus, the W126 found itself at the end of its career between fronts, still loved and coveted, but no longer unquestionably invulnerable. It was the classic situation of a legend at risk of being overtaken by its own greatness. In 1991, production of the W126 ended after more than 12 years, an unusually long period in the automotive world. With almost 800,000 units built, it was the most successful S-Class of all time and had secured Mercedes-Benz an image that endures to this day: technical superiority, safety, and an almost untouchable elegance. But the world had changed. The 90s demanded even more luxury, new technical gadgets, an S-Class that literally carried the weight of success within itself. The successor, the W140, brought everything: double-glazed windows, electric assistance in abundance, and a dimension that was almost proverbial. But this step also showed how much the era of the W126 had ended. Its clear and timeless style suddenly looked modest compared to the massive contours of the W140. For many customers, the farewell was difficult. The W126 had created an image that in its simplicity and elegance was hard to surpass. It was the S-Class that made Mercedes definitively synonymous with luxury, and at the same time, one that didn't show off, but dominated with lordly silence. Today, the W126 is considered not only the most successful, but also possibly the best S-Class of all time. Its restraint, combined with technical innovation, makes it a classic that constantly gains value in the vintage car scene. While its successor W140 was often criticized for seeming too large and heavy, the W126 is celebrated for its balance. Large enough to command respect, but not so overloaded as to seem inaccessible. What really happened to it can be summed up as follows. It went from the status symbol of the 80s to a cult object for collectors and enthusiasts. In well-maintained condition, examples today reach prices that reflect their importance back then. Moreover, it has become a symbol of the golden era of Mercedes, a time when engineering and restraint were still more important than marketing spectacle. The W126 hasn't disappeared. It lives on, in collectors' garages, at classic car meets, and in the memories of millions of people who once saw it on the streets. What remains is the understanding. This S-Class was more than a car. It was a promise of safety, of elegance, and of a world in which constancy was still a virtue.